Syracuse Orange fans, can you feel the heat?
Welcome to yet another edition of Orange Heat. My name's Giovanni Heater, as always, and thank you so much for joining me. It's a beautiful Saturday. It's week 0 of college football. College game days down in Disney World, Orlando, Florida, and we're just kicking off the 2019 college football season. I have Tyler Marona, a former Syracuse defensive end, on here as a guest with me today. Tyler, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and throw in a little bit of what your podcast has to offer?
Yeah, man, my name is Tyler Marona. I was number 92 on the Syracuse football team, and that was back in 2013. Unfortunately, I had a pretty short career just due to injuries. I got a concussion in camp, and I had a few prior to coming to Syracuse, so I didn't really get to play a whole lot. But the big thing that I do now is I have a podcast called the Trademark Podcast, Syracuse Football. And what it is, it's basically me just like rant and raving and living my dreams of once playing through a podcast. And it's funny, I like to bring people on and just and BS. I'm starting to get a little bit more analytical with season coming around. But really, I'm a storyteller that loves football, and that's basically what I love doing. So that's what I do, and I just talk nonsense into a microphone and go from there.
Excellent. Me and you both, man. Me and you both. If you haven't checked it out, guys, go check out the Trademark Podcast. It's fantastic. One of the most recent episodes, he had strength and conditioning coach Sean Edinger on there. It was great. I enjoyed it. And you guys should definitely go check that out because there's a lot to be heard out there. All right. Now, me and Tyler, we have a little bit of a plan. We're just going to go through and give you some what to expect for this upcoming football season. As you guys know, I already did a preview and prediction episode with the schedule. I already went through the depth chart with Tommy Wildhack. And there's just some little things here that we can talk about. And I wanted to get an episode in. I wanted to bring Tyler on. So let's get right into it. What, Tyler, do you think is going to be different this year that we necessarily didn't see last year?
Oh, that's a good question. I think just broad strokes wise, I think we're going to see more balance as far as this team goes. I think that they're going to try to not play their hand so much as far as putting all their eggs in the Eric Dungy basket. Number one, because he's not here anymore, but number two, because it's to me, that's always a non-sustainable way to play football. If you are putting 90% of the load of any team on one person, whether that's in any sport, whether that's LeBron James in basketball, whether that's Justin Verlander in baseball, it's too much. And we saw how much it literally, Eric tried to put the team on his back and his back literally gave out,
right.
Time after time. And and I know it's a dumb metaphor, but it's true, because it did happen. But I think it's just going to be a lot more balanced team. Personally, I want to see them establish, a good run game. That's what I want to see them do. Whether they do that or not, I don't know. And that because the big thing is that Coach Babers, he built this offense at Baylor and brought it with him, but Baylor is primarily a passing attack team, and so has Syracuse been to this point. But I think that Coach Babers, now that he has his own show, I think that we'll see him try to, run the ball, be a little bit more established on offense as far as a balanced attack, and that's what I hope for. But I also think that we'll get, kind of a flavor of that too coming into this year, and that'll be the big thing that's different is that we can't put as much on, just one person's plate as we have in the past. But I think that's a blessing in disguise, honestly. So that's kind of what I think the main difference is going to be.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. One of the biggest things I said is I believe we're going to see more run game. I feel like we certainly have the personnel to. You have Mo Neal.
Absolutely.
Obviously, Abdul Adams, Jarvian Howard. You could go as deep as, Pierre or Jawar Jordan, which we can get into later with Jawar Jordan. I did want to touch upon him. But I feel like it's important to get the run game going and let Tommy DeVito tread water a little bit and catch his stride. Because if you can, keep linebackers for opposing defenses on their heels a little bit. Maybe they're not going to send the whole blitz at Tommy. Let Tommy have some time in the pocket by threatening them with the run game.
Yeah, I mean, that's huge because the big thing about Tommy DeVito's first year starting is that there's also a couple different offensive linemen that are having their first year starting as a full season. So, and a lot of Tommy as well has had experience playing in Division I football, which is,
Absolutely.
that's about as much as you can ask for as far as a first year starting quarterback. And he might as well have gotten a couple starts just based on the amount of playing time he had. I mean, he dang near threw for, a game's worth of yards in the fourth quarter against UNC. Granted, that was like one of the worst teams we played all year. But
nonetheless, he saved the season with it. So
right, but that's the big thing is that he has big time reps. The Notre Dame game was a fluke, in my opinion. I think that we just went out there and Coach Babers as much said that this is a free game, and they treated it like that. I was kind of surprised at that whole narrative.
I agree. I was a little bit upset with that. He's like, this isn't an ACC game, but what was on the line? I mean, Notre Dame was playing for as much as a college football playoff opportunity, but number 12 in the country versus number 3, how was that? I was hyped as a fan, and I was disappointed.
And that was a huge letdown. I mean, that really was. That was honestly to me, that was the worst part last season. Well, losing to the Pitt, honestly, it was probably the worst. But just because that sucked.
Yeah, anyway, it's true.
The Notre Dame.
Honestly,
game,
the weather delay killed that game.
Yeah, it did. It did. And there's no doubt about that. And the worst part about that game was I was actually flying home from Texas, and I had to miss overtime. So
I heard about that on the Cuse Militia podcast. If you haven't listened to that, guys, go check out Sean and Joe as well.
Yeah. So then they're great guys. But I think that with establishing that run game, like you said, keeping linebackers honest, because that was the biggest thing with Tommy last year is that he is very good on, I would say, beginner to intermediate coverage concepts, but I think he still needs to see that upper tier, which he will face against, Clemson's and the Florida States and the NC States of the world, once he actually gets into the meat of the ACC schedule. So, I mean, the easiest thing you can do is just turn around backwards and hand it off to a guy and have him run straight. It's the playing football.
Right.
So, I mean, if we can do that well, then we'll be styling.
Absolutely. What do you think about? We saw it a little bit last year. Play action. I mean, if you can get the run game going, that offers a lot of opportunity with play action as well.
It does. I think play action's it's a product of being able to run the ball, though.
Right.
And also, but the big thing that people don't realize about play action is, let's say a guy I always think of guys that are dual threat quarterbacks that have the best play action ability because they have the threat of running. But you also have to have a big arm to be able to pull off some of these throws because a lot of the time the open throw is all the way downfield. It could be 40, 50 yards downfield. Tommy has the arm to be able to throw that ball now.
I was just about to say, that's the beautiful thing. Right.
Yeah, so we actually have the ability to make that happen in an under center format, and Tommy's not afraid to get under center too, which I really like. So because he's a good athlete.
Yeah.
He's a really good athlete.
And it's not even there's the deep ball threat, which is huge. But even just you could see it when Tommy DeVito's throwing the screen passes. They're the little slants up the middle for about 5-6 yards. He just has so much more of a zip on the ball that, Dungy didn't really have. It got there a whole half a second quicker sometimes, which is all the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the difference about playing in high school to college to pro. You need to shave those tenths off, those half a second off. And I mean, in reality, the biggest difference from moving from high school to D1 for me was literally things weren't a half second faster. They were 2 seconds faster. An average play in high school is 5 seconds. In college, it's 3. That's it is literally you have to get so much more done in a shorter amount of time. But and Tommy's arm is capable of getting that done, which is the awesome part about where we're at right now.
That makes me, as long as the line can hold up, I'm really not worried about him. Some people are curious to see if he's really going to be able to. I'm not worried. I mean, he might have his moments early on of, but everybody does. I mean, Dungy threw 4 interceptions down in Miami, middle of his, second or third season. Everyone has their moments,
Yeah, certainly. And no matter how good you are, you're always going to have stumbling blocks. But I think that Tommy is he's the quarterback that's had the highest upside, I think, in the last, however many years since McNabb. So,
Oh, absolutely.
So that being said, like, let him make mistakes, because that'll eventually lead to learning lessons, and then from there, like, all you do is get better. So I'm all for it, man. Like, make mistakes as long as you don't make them twice.
Absolutely. All right, now I wanted to touch upon this. Last year, you had Ravian Pierce. You saw him catch a few balls, a few touchdowns. Aaron Hackett did catch a touchdown in the Pitt game. He had that big catch that would have sealed the game against Clemson. But we had an illegal man downfield, as everybody knows. Do you think we're going to see more of a receiving tight end this year than the more traditional blocking tight end that we've had recently?
If we don't, I will be concerned. That would be a place for concern, because if you look at NFL offenses and the way that they operate, and the abilities that Tommy has presents themselves like a more wide open NFL offense. And what I mean by that is, like, I look at a guy, and I'm a big Cowboys fan, so I always look at a guy like Dak Prescott. He needs a tight end to be successful. Like, when he has Jason Witten, he's so much better and even with a guy like Tony Romo is so much better when he had Jason Witten than when he did it.
Right.
And to have that, and the reason being is because tight ends run simplified routes that ultimately try to poke holes in a defense, meaning that the tight end's route is simple, but he's supposed to get to a place that has the ability to be open like 90% of the time. And if you have a guy open 90% of the time, even if it is for 4 or 5 yards at a pop, if you hit that 2 times in a row, you got a first down, and you just keep going. And hopefully after the defense gets tired and, they're like annoyed, like, oh my gosh, this guy, all he's doing is just, getting 5 yards a pop, then that's when you get your big, 25, 30, 40 yard passing yard plays. And that's when, you start to, throw the ball over the top. So I hope so. I think Luke Benson, freshman, I think he's going to be a contributor. He can run, and I love that about him. He needs, and that's something that I was going to talk about on my show, but I'll just talk about now. I think Luke Benson's going to have a big season. And if this team wants to be like a top 10 team, there's no choice, he
Right.
has to. So we'll see. It remains to be seen. I don't know what the coaching staff's plan is, but I trust him.
Yeah, and I'm not saying, we need a Tom Brady Gronk thing. I'm not saying he needs to be look number one. But to have that option, he looks once down the field, then he's going to take his second look, say it's, Taj Harris, then maybe a third look to Sean, or the third or fourth look is the tight end. That's all I'm asking for. To have that option is going to be huge when you need those short yardage.
It's just the ability to have it, like you said, you nailed it.
Just to threaten defenses a little bit and open up other opportunities, if nothing else.
Because, like, if you know that you don't have to worry about a guy, it makes playing defense so much easier.
Right,
right. Then you're at an advantage, because the biggest thing about playing defense is that you're always at a disadvantage, because you don't know what play the other team is running, and you don't know when they're snapping it. Like, there are so many, like, deficiencies while being a defender, or like so many like shortages that you don't get that are in favor of the offense, that anything that you can do to eliminate that advantage is like helps so much. And like if we can turn that around on them, then we become a much more dynamic offense.
Absolutely. Now, before we turn over to the defensive side of the ball, last year Syracuse ranked number 11th in the country with 38.4 points per game, and they averaged 45.2 points per game at home. Just shows a little bit, how, not that they struggled on the road, but it's easier to score points in your own building, of course, especially the controlled climates of the Dome. But the biggest question is, can they keep that where it is, if not better? And what do you think about that?
I didn't even realize we scored that many points at home. That's pretty nuts.
I know it.
That's awesome. You know what? This is one I don't know. I don't know if this team is going to be able to. And the tough part about answering this question is that the first 2 games are on the road, so we can throw those out, and then our first home games against Clemson. So I think the first 2 weeks, we'll probably see like a 50 against Liberty, and probably like 35 plus against Maryland, which would then average out to about the same. So maybe, I mean, that's a lot of points, man, especially for a first-year starting quarterback. But I think if we don't, we'll get pretty close, and I think that 38 is a strong number to kind of rest on.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of the conference is going to be improved too. So I think that we'll not score as many, but I think we're also going to be not giving up as many as well. So there's maybe that little trade off.
That led me to my next point. I was just about to say that, we might not score as many, but the defense is going to be even better, which makes me feel more comfortable with not scoring. I mean, if you watch, a lot of the national championship games, stuff like that, they're not scoring. I mean, last year was an exception, but they're not scoring 40, 50 points. They're scoring like 24 max, and it's a defensive game. So
exactly, and that's like the NFL. It's like the average game is 24 to 20, I think. So that's, and because defenses are, it's just the speed of the defense and the abilities of the defense are, once you get up to that, really tier 1 type of program, you should not be able to score more than 30 on a top tier program, which I think that Syracuse has the top tier defensive program right now.
Absolutely. I think the only exception to that rule would be the Oklahoma Sooners, and they just had 2 back-to-back Heisman-winning quarterbacks. So
Right. But I mean, that's that conference though. Like
Absolutely.
The only way to win in that conference is just to like sprint out. Just Texas Tech, and can you score as many as possible? Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, you saw Oklahoma versus Texas Tech last year. It was like 55. They just it's a score fest.
I think it's hilarious, honestly. Like, I think it's like crazy to see these guys. I mean, it's like seeing a piece of art, or like going to the Ripley's Believe It or Not. Like, it's like a museum. Like it's a different world.
Yeah, I enjoy watching it though. It's exciting, when they keep scoring. The games are longer. I enjoy it. We scored a lot last year. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, but I think the other thing about the way that we scored a lot last year is that like we created a lot of like short field opportunities.
Yep.
The Big 12, they start from their 20 like every time, and they just go 80 yards like every time. Like it's crazy. That to me is like what's so different about that conference, is that they're like, no, we just concede the fact that like the other team is going to score. We just hope it's 3 instead of 7. Like that's a weird way to be. Like, to me at least, like, no, like every drive should be 0 for the other team as far as I'm concerned.
The defense, it's just bizarre. But you said, creating those short field situations, which led me right into my next thing about the defense. Can we force the same amount of turnovers as last year? That was a huge contribution as to why we scored so many points. We had the 3rd most turnovers in the country with 31 forced turnovers. And then we were the only Power 5 school with over 30 forced turnovers. So our defense was phenomenal. And, people don't even really realize that statistic. So that's going to be crucial to our success. Can we keep up with that number? I think we can.
No, but I will give you a caveat on that. We will not create as many turnovers because people are not going to dare us as much. That's what I think. I think that we're going to be able to play better defense. I guess, let me put it this. Versing, like, instead of, I don't know how to put it, but like, we're just going to play better, like, fundamental defense, as far as like, people aren't just going to try to like run up and down our throat. I mean, they will try to like run the ball more, as far as like, and they're not going to try to throw it over the top. Like, they're not going to play into our hand. I guess that's what I'm trying to say, is like, people aren't going to like dare us and like play into like the trap that we're always setting with our secondary. So like that's not going to, like, it's going to lead to teams being more conservative, but teams are going to have to like kind of live and die by that. So they're not going to get as many yards. It's like, I think it's going to be like more incompletions. We're going to see more pass breakups. I think we're going to see more incomplete passes, more like lower passer ratings when throwing to certain receivers, throwing against certain guys. And then from there, I think teams are really going to just try to come out and try to run on us. If it doesn't work, then it's just going to be a long afternoon for them. Like, I think it's just going to be like more like punishing D rather than like like takeaways.
Absolutely. I think you just changed my mind. That makes a lot of sense. The defense is just looking so exciting. The defensive line, you lose Slayton, but I feel like those gaps, you're not going to fill it with one guy, but you have a different mesh of guys that can at least help fill that void a little bit.
Certainly.
You have your ends, Alton Robinson, and oh my God, I'm drawing a blank. Kendall Coleman, duh. They're gonna be just a year better, a year more exciting. Still looking at the offense, though, are we going to see a 1,000-yard rusher this year? I know you had this debate with Sean and the Cuse
1,000%.
Militia.
I mean, it's not even a question. It's not even a question. I don't know why it's even a question. There's no question about this. Mo Neal is going to rush for over 1,000 yards. It's going to be silly if he doesn't. I don't think his touchdowns are going to be up there. I think Jarvion still gets all those, which sucks for Mo. But it's going to be imperative for him to run touchdowns in from 20 or more yards out. That's
Right.
where I think if he can run for multiple 20-plus yard touchdowns, then I think that oh man, yeah, that's going to be a scary team.
I mean, he's bigger. He's, you see Sean Enninger putting the muscle on him. He's just faster. He was electrifying as it was. When he gets into space, I'm scared for other teams. And honestly, Jarvion, the same thing. I mean, you saw him last year. Do you remember that highlight? Just right off the line, a linebacker comes up. He's face-to-face with a Florida State guy, and he dusts him. Just a juke move, and the guy fell, and he's gone. So
yeah, man. I mean, our running backs are so talented. It's crazy. And the cool part is that most of these guys aren't, 5-star recruits. I mean, Abdul Adams was a 4-star transfer from Oklahoma. I get that. But I've seen plenty of 4-star guys that could, it's the stars are like one thing or another, but that's like another story for another day. But anyway, like what I'm trying to say is like these guys aren't, guaranteed NFL players, but they're very good college players. Like really, really good college players. And I think if you go up and down the line with these running backs, like it's tough because like it's gonna be hard for like if Mo does his job, it'll be hard for anybody else to really replace him, or beat him out for what he's gonna be able to provide because he does so many things well. So but like I said, I think the only way we don't have a 1,000-yard rusher is if for some reason like that. It would have to be like, okay, whatever he gets in reception yards, like takes away from his rushing yards.
True. That's fair enough. And, Mo is that option. You saw it last year. You had that crazy play in the Camping World Bowl where Mo turns it upfield for that.
That's what I'm saying.
Very near touchdown. That was like 30 receiving yards right there. So
exactly.
Okay, so now you mentioned, Jarvion's going to be your goal line. You need that first down or your goal line red zone back, which he was last year. He played that role. You mentioned Mo Neal's going to be your one back. Where does Abdul fit in there if Mo Neal's doing his job? Could he get anywhere near even like 500, 600, 700 yards?
I don't know, man. I kind of feel bad for the guy because like I mean, I don't know. I could be totally wrong, man. Like he could end up being like the truth and like I just don't see it. But I think that he's just like a very well-rounded back as well. Like doesn't do anything exceptionally well. Just like a good college player, like I said. I think the tough part for him is that he comes in and he just doesn't have quite the longevity with the program as a Mo Neal. That doesn't mean that he won't, because next year, he could become the sole guy, if he wants to stay, which I believe he will. I have no reason to believe he wouldn't, especially if Mo's going to do it. But if you notice how Coach Babers runs the program, or at least the running backs, he gives everybody their shot, the senior, to have their opportunity to be the bell cow back. I mean, going all the way back with, Dante Strickland, he was great. Fredericks before him. It's just like, everybody gets their opportunity to be the number one. And I think Mo really kind of almost took shine away from Dante Strickland last year. And the same thing would have to happen this year for Abdul Adams to, supersede what Mo Neal is capable of doing. But I don't think that Abdul Adams is better than Mo Neal. So I don't know, because I think, honestly, after this year, I think Jarvion's going to be ready to be the number one back then. So it's like, what is Abdul Adams even doing? I think I'm not saying to, leave, but I just think it may, not work out for him, which would suck. But, I'm just, that's just me being honest. I don't know, where he fits in long term with this thing. I think he's just an awesome, backup, not a specialist.
I couldn't agree more with what you said about Jarvion Howard. First of all, ever since he got here, he's been my favorite player. So I love watching him play
too.
Yeah,
absolutely my favorite player.
He's got such a good work ethic, and I think maybe not right at this moment, but as far as where his ceiling is, I think he's the best running back on the roster.
Yeah, I do too. I think he's the most talented player on,
Yeah.
at least in the backfield for sure. I mean, not Tommy, but like he's not better than Tommy.
I mean as far as the running back room goes.
Yeah, peak for peak.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just kind of clarifying what I said, but
Yeah.
I think Tommy has the potential to be like
NFL talent.
Yeah, I think he could be like one of the best players in like Q's history. But
Yeah.
if he, then that's just because like statistically, I think Coach Bayers is gonna like just be a kid in the candy shop with him like next year and the year after. Like if Tommy comes back as like a true senior or a redshirt senior, and I think it's just gonna be like disgusting what he does.
Like seriously,
but we're talking about
Heisman.
That's like way in the future though.
But
yeah,
I still think he has that ability. You saw what he did against North Carolina, and I've got to say, North Carolina was not as bad as people think because, they won 2 games, but they played a lot of teams in the ACC into overtime or the fourth quarter and just lost games by like a possession, including the game against us.
Yeah, and they had draft picks. So, I mean, that's always with the ACC, man. Like, there's always going to be a good team that, slips up and, mentally can't handle it. And that was cleared. They fired their coach.
Yeah.
Same thing with Louisville. Like they're all studs down there too, but they just mentally checked out. They hated their coach, and that's fair. I would too, like as a loser. So
yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
Like,
yeah. I mean, I hate to get like that on my show, but good God, do I hate Bobby Petrino?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
everybody does.
He's a loser. So that's just like
right. All right. Now we talked about that. Let's talk about this. We mentioned some guys that, could break through a little bit. Who are your sleepers, so to speak, on this team?
Oh, sheesh. I think Josh Black, honestly, I think he could have a big impact, starting out.
He's my number one. He's my number one. Yeah.
I think I got that from your list, and he definitely stood out to me just because he really hasn't gotten his opportunity yet, and I think that with just the way he looks, the way he's feeling, I think the easiest position to scheme into a game and to replace is at defensive line, just because I was talking about this on the Q's Motion podcast, but. It's not as like required. Like you as a defensive lineman, you don't have to really be in sync with all other 10 defenders. Like all you have to really do is your job. It's not a position of synchrony. It's a position of individual success and failure. So, and that's why I think that he can come in, and if he's ready to go, again, mentally, and he knows the playbook, then I have no reason to believe that he won't be super successful because, I mean, he has the body for it. I just want to see what he can do in putting it together.
Absolutely. He definitely has the build, the body for it. I mean, he's working he called himself a freak of nature in the weight room. I mean, look at him. I believe it. If he can put all the pieces together, I think you could see him have a seriously big season here. Maybe even if not this year, next year.
Yeah, I think he slates in this is the thing that's somewhat annoying and awesome about college is that you turn over the roster so frequently.
Right.
But it also lends itself to have guys get their opportunities. His opportunity has come right now, and he could ultimately end up, really playing a lot this year too, with how much, just an injury already. I think that if he works in well and does a great job, then I think that maybe he could, potentially start at the 1 technique and then, play off of everybody else that's already starting. So I like him. I mean, is it crazy to think that, some of these offensive linemen could be considered sleepers? I guess. I don't know. It's hard to quantify because there's no true statistic for that.
Right. It's all going to depend on how they work together, really, which I trust our coaching staff with it.
Exactly. And they're the flip side of the defensive line. Like, they need continuity over anything else. So, So really, I see the O-line working as, one. I need to grade them on a curve. Yeah, you can grade individual success and failure based off of what they're doing. But a lot of the time, there's a lot of explanation can be said for one guy having a bad plays on his counterpart next to him just because of communication. So, but then nationally, I think that the easy one is just people are saying, oh, Eric Dungy, all-time leader and all this and that and that. So if you want to go that route and say Tommy's a sleeper, which there's no way a Syracuse fan would say that, but the national media may bring that up, and that's just silly. But It is the way it is.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, as a Syracuse fan, we know what the community has to say. we can't really see Tommy as a sleeper, but on a national level, I haven't really seen much love for him, so we'll see what happens. But as far as our Syracuse community, Tommy DeVito is not a sleeper.
Well, no, but not,
Right.
like I said, but it's just more so like it depends on like how like micro or macro you want to look at it.
Right.
But and then I think Michael Jones, I think he's going to come in and play a lot, and I think he's going to help. And I'm excited for him. I'm excited for him. Lee, excited for Andrew Armstrong, excited for Lakeem Morris.
Yeah.
I'm excited that new faces get to play because it's great to fall in love with new players every year, and that's the beauty about football.
I love it.
You fall in love with these characters, you fall in love with these players, and then you look back and you say, "Wow, man, I'm so thankful for the opportunity it was to watch him." And what some of these linebackers, they're going to leave after this year, but if we can see some good reps from these young guys, then that's awesome, because then we go into next season with not having to fear about the linebackers again. So
yeah, well, you took the next guy right out of my mouth, Michael Jones. Beautiful thing is, you got 3 more years after this with him.
Exactly.
That's how you build a program right there. That's how you build a program. Another guy that I had on here, he's going to be lining up right next to Josh Black, Kenneth Ruff. I think he was an unsung beast last year.
No doubt. This D-line is coached up. There's nothing I can say about them that I haven't already said. That's just purely in praise for them. I think that I've never seen a unit explode onto a scene like I did last year with our defensive line. 1 through 4. Even 1 through 8, as far as even the depth at every position, getting 2 guys in there,
absolutely,
at each position at least per game, and even our second stringers are having multiple sacks. Like I said, there's nothing I can say more than I've already said, besides the fact that they have been probably one of the most impressive units in college football, and there's no doubt about it.
Yeah, another guy, in my head, he's not really a sleeper, because I saw what he did in the NC State game last year. I saw how good he is, but to, the typical SU fan that might not be as gung-ho about it as we are, Ifeatu Melifonwu, number 23, 6'3" defensive back, he's something to look out for.
NFL player, his brother plays. The coolest part about him was that I noticed in La Familia when he was at the Super Bowl, his brother won, he really internalized it, and he said, like, hey, whatever it takes to get here, I'm going to do it, and it's already shown. So, that's a guy who gets it, and he obviously has the body, like you said, and it's just cool that, like, we get these guys on campus now. Like, it's so freaking cool that we have good players. Like, I can't even tell you. Like, it's so crazy. Cool to have, awesome players.
I heard you touch upon this. I don't know if it was on Cuse Militia or what it was on, but, like, how crazy it is that a few years ago it wasn't even an option to have a 6'3" defensive back, and now our whole secondary is huge.
Exactly. It was kind of embarrassing at some points to look across the field and just know, like, man, they've got 3 NFL receivers and we got nothing for them. That's just not a good place to be. Whether you're on the team or not, it doesn't really make you feel much better, because, a guy like me and, the guys that played, we still carry around the fact that, like, our name was always going to be tied to playing with Syracuse. So, and that's like a big point of pride for us as far as, like, the way that the program goes, which is great because, like, now, like, let's say we win the national championship this year, I can be like, well, I played for Syracuse, like, don't you know?
Right.
But on the other side, like, if we like go 0-12, it's like, hey, dude, did you play for that team? So that's what, like, to me, like, that's what makes it so cool, is that, like, I get to sit back and be proud and say, like, wow, like, yeah, a couple years ago this wasn't possible, and even our defensive backs that played on that team would say, yeah, it wasn't possible. So it's like, and that's, like, the cool part is that, like, we have guys that are unafraid because they have the capabilities.
Right. I think, honestly, more so than Trevor Lawrence and ETN and everything, I'm more excited about Clemson coming into the Dome and us getting to see Justin Ross, T. Higgins, and Amari Rodgers line up against Andre Cisco, Trill Williams, Scoop Bradshaw, Ifeatu Melifonwu, our whole fantastic secondary, because I think it's going to be just so exciting what happens in the secondary.
Definitely, and I think a sleeper may not be the right way to put this, but Chris Frederick, redshirt senior
Yes,
cornerback,
absolutely.
he to me, he is somebody that has, and Julian Wiggum talked about this on my shows, that he's just matured so much to a point where like the talent again was always there, but he was a guy that needed time to really get that learning curve down, learn how to play the right way, how to play at a big time level, and seeing him on La Familia break down his interception against Florida State was, I mean, it was just sick, man.
Yeah.
Like I think he really is going to be the kind of, I hate to say like linchpin because like we have so much talent in that secondary, but he can be a guy that, you know, has the ability to really elevate us even more. Like if he can play at, you know, that all conference level with the Andre Cisco, with the Trill Williams, with the Iffy Melifonwu, then like we could potentially see a top 3 secondary in the country. Like,
Oh, I
just
agree.
because
100%.
we have an all-conference guy at every position. Like that's
Yeah. And the thing
crazy.
too is you see they're putting in the work. He said, I don't even feel comfortable going into a game until I've watched at least 3 games of footage on that team. Like if that's not reassuring as a
That's
fan, then I don't know
crazy.
what is.
Absolutely. I mean, that's everything you want to see right there.
Absolutely. And another guy too, I love watching, hard hitter. You got to know him through this La Familia, huge part of the secondary, Evan Foster. The dude hits like a train.
Absolutely. Yeah, he's going to be fun. I'm excited to see his progression, see him kind of come of age as well. I think that he's going to be a lot of fun, and you know it's cool because you know I love the position flexibility he brings. He could fill in at linebacker too if we need, which I honestly think that's what he is. But
True,
you know,
the way he hits like a linebacker too, like his
and
tackling ability.
Yeah, he could be a little stiff from time to time because he has linebacker hips, but he has the speed of a safety, which is like the kind of the thing that, you know, has him, you know, playing in the true like secondary, but he really is just kind of like a roll down linebacker, which you know, in high school you'll see 3 linebackers and then a safety come up and be a 4th linebacker because, you know, quarterbacks like are, you know, not as wise to knowing how to beat one safety, but you know, he kind of disguises himself as a 3rd or a 2nd to 3rd and a half linebacker, which is pretty cool.
Right. A few names I just want to throw out there for you Cuse fans. You know, when you're watching these games, just keep an eye out for these guys. I think they could have the ability to do some special things. You might not see, you know, a big highlight play, but you just see them working in the system when they do get their reps on the field. And here's a few names I'm just throwing out there. Lakeem Williams, Sherrod Johnson at wide receiver. We already mentioned Josh Black. We mentioned Andrew Armstrong. We mentioned Michael Jones. Neil Nunn, freshman. Not sure how much PT he's going to get with that, you know, deep secondary, but we'll see what happens. Mentioned Iffy Melifonwu. Juwan Wallace at linebacker. Mentioned Ruff. And I think Courtney Jackson at wide receiver is going to get some burn as well.
Yeah, man, it's exciting times. It's a deep roster again for the first time in a long time. And like I said, it's gonna be awesome to get to know these guys and to see them play on the field. I can't wait.
And that La Familia offers that too. You just get to make that even deeper connection. Like you don't actually know these guys personally, but it feels like I've known Eric Dungey like my whole life. But you don't actually know him.
For sure.
But like watching him play and stuff, it's crazy.
And that's the beauty of sports.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Before we get into wrapping this up, we're at the end of the show, we're going to rank all our position groups by letter. But first, I want to talk about this. Who do you think is going to be redshirted? One of my biggest guys this year, I think, is Jawar Jordan. He's a 5'9", 167-pound freshman running back out of Arizona. I think he has talent, but we're so deep at that position. He's a little bit underweight and sized at this point that I think he could be a redshirt possibility. And I wouldn't be opposed to that, because you can still see him in 4 games early on in this, or anytime throughout the season with the new rule.
For sure. Yeah, I would almost put a lock on him to be redshirted just because of the fact that there's too much depth. You know, any quarterback after quarterback 3 redshirting, any receiver after receiver 6. So typically you want to carry about 6 receivers. And then after that, you could look into potentially redshirting anybody who's left over. Anybody after D lineman 10, meaning the first 10 guys that are your best 10 defensive linemen. That would include a Cooper Dawson. That would include
Love Cooper Dawson. Love that.
Yeah,
I had an interview with him on here once.
I just don't think his body's quite ready yet.
Oh yeah,
as far as to handle that. But and that's just kind of like guys that you throw in there. Neil Nunn's interesting. Like he could be a guy that just doesn't quite make as much PT as we thought, and then we'll look back and be like, oh, cool, like that was actually a redshirt year for him. To your point, like he only played in 4 games, or he only played in 2 games.
That's the beauty of that new rule, and you got to see that live in action, like with Jarvion Howard. Well, no, he didn't redshirt last year. I was questioning that, like after week 4 though, he appeared in 4 games. I was like, okay, so are they going to redshirt this guy? Clearly they didn't. But what are some examples? But you get what I'm saying. That 4 games is huge because they get their experience. And they're not wasting a year of eligibility.
Well, the original rule was that you couldn't play more than the first 2 games of the season, or if it was going to be for like medical reason, you couldn't have played more than 80% of the season. So 80% of the season, I believe, was 10
that's a
games.
Lot of the season, though.
Exactly. So like you had, and it was like once you crossed the threshold of week 3, like there was like you could play 1, 2, and 3, and then after that, like there was no more that you could play. But now they just said, well, it's the same rule, but it doesn't have to be in succession. So like you can be like game 1, game 12, and game 9. Like those can be the 80% that you don't play. So that's kind of like the cool part, is that it's not like a straight line anymore, which I really appreciate because it just makes common sense. Like, okay, like you may need a guy to come in, but it should be a retrospect thing. Like, oh, in retrospect, the guy redshirted. Like, we didn't plan it out that he redshirted. Like, I think that helps out a lot.
Right. I couldn't agree with you more. We'll see what happens. I mean, there's no really telling who's going to redshirt necessarily. And like you said, you might not even know till the end of the season. But exciting stuff there because you do have all this talent coming in. You're building a program. Let's get into our ranking the positions. What do you think, Tyler?
Well, you tell me, man. Where do you want to start?
All right, let's start with the offensive line.
All right. Oh, jeez.
I know.
The hardest one to.
We got to throw ourselves into the fire here, man. Nothing to lose, right?
I would say last year, just to compare, I'd say they had a good year, B to B plus. To start out, I would say we are starting out as far as with the unknown. I'll start out with a B minus. That can improve up to a B plus again. But we don't have guys yet that are A-level material. We just don't have A-level offensive linemen. Which is fine. Key though.
That's key is yeah.
So and I think that eventually we will, just because of the way that you see the way that the NFL is going, and that Coach Babers can look back and say, hey, look how many great quarterbacks I've had here. You can protect this guy, yada yada yada. Whatever. It will turn around eventually, but we've also been getting the job done with who we have. So, who even care, I just don't think that they have like that, elite level to project the next level. Again, I think that Syracuse does a great job at finding great college players, and the O-line and D-line are, great examples of that.
And a B minus, you know what? I'll take it. As long as Tommy DeVito has a few seconds to throw the ball and we can get the run game going, I'm okay.
Yeah, and I think, B minus ultimately hurts the run game the most, but I don't think that there are that many A-plus defensive lines to try to counteract too. I guess that's the way you got to look at it, is like, what's your competition like? And if that's the case, then, on a grading out of the best offensive lines in the country, ours would probably come in at, 80% of that. So that's kind of where I get that B minus from. Absolutely.
Now, looking at the quarterback position, I got to go. Oh, I didn't even give my grade yet for the O-line.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. I think I got to go one below you. I think I got to go C plus to B minus, just because it's a big question mark right now. And, Eric Dungy did so much with his legs last year that we don't really know what they're going to look like with a pocket passing quarterback. Because they didn't necessarily have that pressure of, oh, this guy can't. And now I think Tommy DeVito's actually faster than Eric Dungy. I don't know. He's not necessarily tough.
That's quite a take.
Yeah. But just his actual physical speed, like if you're running a 40-yard dash, I think he's faster than Eric Dungy.
No, man. Eric ran like a 4.6 at the pro day. That's pretty quick, man.
That's pretty fast. I don't know exactly, but like Eric just has like such a bigger body to move. It felt like, I don't know. But nonetheless, I got to go like C plus just because we don't know what it's going to look like with the pocket passing quarterback. We have no
Fair.
idea.
And that's totally fair, and I don't fault you at all for that.
Yeah. All right. Let's take a look at the quarterback position.
I mean, I have no idea what any of our backups can do. So, like, just throwing them completely out. Like, because honestly, if you don't know what a quarterback can do, that means they're an F. So, not for averaging.
Last year we had like an A plus just because you had that depth of Dungy to DeVito.
Yeah. Exactly. So, like, that's not here anymore. Like, if Tommy does get hurt, like for a season-ending injury, like we're toast. So, it's just kind of tough to think about. But
the one I could beg to differ with you on that though, in the fact that Clayton Welch is a 6'5" quarterback, and I'm not saying I feel like as comfortable as when we went Dungy to DeVito, but we're not going to win 10 games with that guy. But if you can get to bowl eligibility with that guy, okay. Without Tommy DeVito, he's tall, he's big. You have Rex Culpepper still. I just feel more comfortable than having like a Zach Mahoney back there.
Well, yeah. I mean, we definitely have more talent. I guess what I'm trying to say is like the season that we knew was no longer available. Like,
agreed.
10+ wins off the table.
Right.
And that would be a disappointment because of our, how good our defense is. And this is the only time every year in football, every coach will always say, this is the only time this team will be together. This is the one season that this exact team will be together. And I think this exact team has, really good potential. So, if Tommy goes down, then at that point, like, this team as we know it is kind of not the same. So,
right.
But that being said, I think that we're starting off very strong with Tommy. If I had to bring in everybody else, I'd say our quarterback room is maybe like a C plus, but with the high end of Tommy being like a B to B plus as well. And for all I know, he could be like an A. So it just depends on how high he can really soar. But factoring everybody in together because of the unknown, because of the fact that without Tommy, we become a much, a lower ceiling team. I guess it's a C plus for me.
Okay, I agree with you. When you throw everybody in the mix, I'm going to go C plus to B minus. I think Tommy DeVito's an A, and I'm going to put an A on Tommy DeVito because you saw what he did in the North Carolina game. The Notre Dame game literally doesn't even exist in my brain. When you look at last
season. But it
season.
still scares me. It scares because that was an elite D.
But I will say it was an elite defense, and I think Tommy DeVito actually played well in the fact that there were a lot of dropped passes. There were a lot of
right.
That's not his fault. He hit a lot of guys that game could have. You score a couple touchdowns on those long bombs. We're in the game. Notre Dame doesn't pull away because our team doesn't really give up. So I don't think Tommy DeVito actually played that bad in that game. I think the whole team kind of quit on him a little bit.
And when you say it that way, you're right. And, there is some things that Tommy does that I'm like, it's hard to comprehend that he can pull them off. So,
right.
I think he is closer to an A than I give him credit for. But the thing is that part about being an A plus quarterback is being able to have your teammates, pull their own weight too. How do you make that happen? That's the thing about Tom Brady is that he's exactly Tom Brady will always get the best out of every single receiver he has because he is so on, on par with all of them. So that's the big thing. But now that Tommy is the clear-cut number one, there is no more, hey, I'm playing backup, I'm playing spell to Dungy in case he gets hurt. I think that the chemistry shoots off the charts. And, I mean, he could very well be an A. But for now, I'm curving it a little bit just based on, the fact that he needs to start 12 games now. And that's different than starting 0.
Yeah,
so,
I can't fault you for that. The pressure's certainly there with the community. But there's some things, too, like, Dino Babers in his press conference, that question was asked, how is your quarterback handling the leadership role? And Dino Babers said he has a lot of faith, and he's not worried about Tommy DeVito being a leader because he said Tommy DeVito has already shown that he's doing that right now. And another thing is, too, you hear guys like Tristan Jackson said in La Familia, he was smart last season. He didn't necessarily take all the reps from Eric Dungy. He said, I know this guy's going to be my quarterback. So you already have that chemistry with guys like Tristan Jackson, Nykeem Johnson.
For sure.
They knew that they had to catch balls from both, and they put that into their craft. So that's a little bit exciting as well.
Absolutely.
All right. Quarterback, we dove into that. Now let's look at the running back room. Probably, besides the defense, this is probably the most exciting and deep position on the offense.
Yeah, certainly. I'll be pretty short with them just because we covered them.
We did, yeah.
A minus.
I'm gonna go with A minus as well. I think that could bump itself up to an A if you have two guys like going somewhere towards a double 1,000 yards, which was crazy to think about. But there's guys that are rushing for
that would be crazy.
That would be crazy. But there's guys that are rushing for 3,000. Right, you know what I mean?
Fair.
So
absolutely.
We'll see what happens.
I totally hear you.
But it could bump itself down to a B plus if we don't, run the game as much, or if the offensive line doesn't pull their own weight. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to go that direction, then I think we would just have to, discount the other positions and just say I think that there's no way that this team's talent at running back is lower than an A minus. I just think that if they don't prove that, then it's nowhere near their fault because we've seen what they can do. So they're the only position on the team that I will give a free pass no matter what happens because I just believe in them that much.
Fair enough. Well said. Wide receivers and tight ends. There's a lot of depth, first of all, at the wide receiver position. Tight end is, as we said, kind of a question mark. If we're going to use them at a receiving, we maybe should have even put tight end with offensive line if you're going to put it the blocking back or the blocking tight end way. But what do you think as a whole?
Receivers, I would say that we are very, very well equipped to play very well this year.
I agree. I'm looking at like an A with the receivers.
I think so too. Which I think that they're straddling the line between B plus and A minus for me, just because that's again splitting hairs, but that we do lose Jamal Custis, and that's the only guy that I
don't think it hurts that much. I gotta say, because he dropped a lot of passes last year.
He did. I think the bigger factor in that is, it's you have to scheme for a guy like that
True.
Can go
6'5",
up and make you pay. He can make you pay at any point. So that's the biggest thing.
That's the one place we're struggling. It doesn't require we don't have that same height. So.
Yeah, and not many other guys are going to command a double quite like he did. And that was kind of an underrated, narrative, is that a lot of guys like to, kind of clown on him for, like you said. But he also had like one of the hardest jobs on the team last year of carrying, the wide receivers and making way for the young guys to come in. But now that the young guys are here, I think that they're going to be just fine. As far as tight ends go, this is like totally unknown for me.
Yeah.
I think if I was a coach, I would say that they were a D right now. But I think that they have talent. So I would say until otherwise proven, I would give them like a C.
I got to say, if you're looking at the tight ends from a blocking perspective and you're going to list Chris Elmore as a tight end, that could bump them up a lot. But it all just depends on how they're going to scheme the offense, what the plans are. So we don't really know. But so for my tight ends, I'm going to go C. And then for my wide receivers, I'm going to go an A because you have the deep threat with Nykeem. Sean Riley's got the best work ethic on the team. I think he's the best guy for his size in the country. Just at guys at that size, I don't think there's anybody better.
Sure.
And I'm excited to see what Tristan Jackson, all of them can do. I think the wide receivers are promising. I'm going to give them an A as long as nobody gets injured farther than Ed Hendricks, which hurts us.
Yeah, it does. But, that's just part of the game, and hopefully that we got some of the injuries out of the way early. That's never the case. Syracuse is actually very fortunate how healthy we were last year.
Yeah.
That's another thing to watch for. So, but receiver's a position now that Coach Babers can just, pretty much put anyone in there, and he can scheme a way to get them the ball. So, I think for schematically, I think they're going to be an A+, but I think that their talent kind of lies at the A- level.
Yeah. And the beautiful thing, too, with the wide receiver position, recruiting-wise, who wouldn't want to come play wide receiver at Syracuse? Who wouldn't?
It's a no-brainer, man.
You're going to get the ball all day long. It's crazy. All right, looking
You got
looking now at the defensive line, I'm just going to throw this out there. It's an A. It's a straight A.
It is.
It-
If with McKinley being out, that downgrades it a little bit.
It does.
But yeah, our
but he's
star
going to be
power
back
on
by
the
week
edge.
2 or 3. So you're looking
Right,
at full
yeah.
season,
Oh, full season, yeah. I think we're gonna be just fine. But yeah, no, we're an A. We're
Yeah.
not quite an A plus, but we're an A.
Yeah, we're not quite an A plus, but we're close. We're an A. We're an A. That's the most exciting part of this team for me. There's nothing better than when it's. I mean, you played for Syracuse. 3rd down and 5, the dome's rocking, and Alton Robinson comes around the edge and gets a sack. Like, there's literally nothing better than that.
It's a beautiful thing.
Beautiful. All right, looking at the secondary. Also intriguing, also exciting. We're throwing out a lot of high letters here with all these A's and stuff. I'm going B plus to an A minus.
Oh
not
man,
better.
that's crazy. This is my one. This is the highest graded group on the team. This is an A. This they could even be an A plus. I mean I would easily say that if this team performs and this group performs, this is like Seattle Seahawks territory, like Legion of Boom type territory. With how this is how good they can be. I firmly believe that. And the cool part is that they're going to have the ability to prove it week in, week out against a passing league in the ACC.
Yeah. Oh my God, you make me want to switch my pick, but I can't. I guess I got to stick with A minus. But yeah, and you got to think Cordy's back. I think Cordy's one of the most underrated. He's so capable of breaking up a pass. It's exciting. It's really just exciting. All right.
Absolutely.
Last but not least, the special teams, A plus, baby.
Oh, yeah. Actually, you're right. They are definitely the best unit on the team. I forgot about that. Yeah, they're like 100 out of 100. Like that's exactly what you'd hope for. Literally, the guy that wins the award at both positions is on the team. So it's I mean that's awesome.
Yeah, it's incredible. Sterling Hofstrichter could play the field position game beautifully. Andre Schmidt, best field goal kicker in the country. He's only going to be a sophomore.
Absolutely.
Sean Riley, I think, is a very deadly returner. You got to look at all these recruits that are, if not redshirted, guys like Markenzie Pierre, running back from last year, guys like, let's see, just in general, guys that aren't going to see the field as much are still going to be key contributions in the special team, which is exciting. I mean, you saw Jamal Costas last year forced a lot of fumbles or muffed punts because he got right up in the grill of some of these returners.
For sure, man. I mean, we're so well coached.
Yeah.
And it proves itself, in spades on specials, and that's the mark of a good team, a team that does everything well in all facets of the game. And they do not take that for granted, and the young guys love it. So if you can have a buy-in culture like that, sky's the limit.
Absolutely. And the buy-in culture is beyond there. Dino Babers, savior. Like, to me, he's on my list of like top 5 favorite people, and like my mom's on that list. So
for sure, man. I mean, he should be. Like, I would be surprised if there's not guys like walking around with Dino Babers tattoos when it's all said and done, man. Like,
right?
If he brings a title to what would be the new title town of Syracuse University, oh boy, man. I don't like. You couldn't tell the story of college football without him at that point, and that's kind of one of those big things. And I mean, he'd be a Hall of Fame coach. So and I think he's proven that he's he's been very underappreciated his whole career. Wherever he's been, and I think that he's finally getting his due. Which, you love that for no matter who it is and what they're doing.
Yeah, I saw a quote from an ESPN writer, and it said something along the lines of, Syracuse isn't far off of the college football playoffs, and that's scary. Like, that's crazy to think that last year we're a game away from it, to be quite honest. Because if you beat Clemson, there's no way you go and lose to Pitt. And if there was no weather delay, I don't think we would have lost to Pitt anyways. And even if they would have lost to Notre Dame, though, an 11-1 ACC champion Syracuse team, how could they not get in the playoffs still?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to think, like, even if you do lose to Pitt, you would play them again in the conference championship game and kind of like avenge that loss per se.
Right.
Then I think It
You
would
know,
be tough. I don't know if a
at that-
two-loss team has ever gotten in.
They
because
have.
I don't think
That's
that
the
there's,
thing. There's never been a
I don't think that
two-loss
there's
team.
any way. I don't think that there's any way at all last year that we lose fewer than 2 games. So I
Right.
think that was always going to be like, 10-3 is great, but like the bowl win was like, I watched that game again the other day, man, and it was such a bad game for the most part. Like
It
that
was
game,
bad.
West Virginia just quit.
Terrible.
We played our half.
They're poor quarterback. Tried to had to fill Will
Destroyed.
Greer's shoes. Every West
Yeah,
Virginia
destroyed,
fan in
man.
the country's ticked, but is what it is.
And maybe we took that game personally. It was a great game. It was an old Big East matchup, and it was our
Yeah.
first bowl game in years. So I mean, there's no way we're losing that game at all.
Absolutely. As we wrap up the show, Tyler, first of all, thank you so much for being on, man. Can I get, I don't know if you want, I understand if you want to save this for your show, but can we get a prediction of what you think our record's going to look like?
Yeah, it's 10-2. 9-3, 10-2, 9-3, 10-2. I think 10-2 just because we don't have Notre Dame this year.
Yeah.
I think that we stumble with another game outside of Clemson just because, like, until otherwise proven.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, there's too much room for inconsistency with the youth on offense. And that's controlling for maybe a game where things just don't go quite as planned or whatever. So
Yeah.
I think 9-3, even 8-4 wouldn't be surprising, but I think we slot in the upper tier second. Or here's what I can say: we finished second in the division, and then we're easily in the top 25 to finish this thing out. Hopefully, we go to Miami for the Orange Bowl, and we kick some ass down there.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, except for the fact that, man, I think you have a chance at the Atlantic because I really believe that Clemson's inexperience at D-line is going to hurt them. I think we played them close the last 2 years. It's in the Dome. That place is going to be hopping. The team knows what's at stake. I think you win that game, and then I think you slip somewhere like a Thursday night on the road at NC State or even like at Florida State, somewhere along those lines. But I really think that you beat Clemson. I don't know why. I do. You did it.
Well,
once.
I mean, it's a great storyline. Yeah, I mean, and that's the big thing is that the last time we played Clemson at the Dome, we won. Granted, that was probably the most perfect game I've ever seen out of Syracuse. We would have to do that again because, look, I mean, here's the thing. You can catch a team sleeping, but when you are actually the second best team in the conference, nobody's sleeping on you anymore.
Sure.
In Clemson, I was hearing somebody told me that they live in South Carolina, and they were at Clemson because I don't know, their work took them there or something like that, and the guy was wearing like a Syracuse polo, and everybody that was a football fan on campus was like, "We're beating you this year." They know that we're coming from. Like, everybody is aware, and that means that the players are aware, the coaches are aware.
Right.
Everybody wants a piece of us too now because, like, the thing about Syracuse is that we are like very humbled as soon as we're not. Then it's like, okay, like here we then we get a little chatty. So it's like,
definitely.
That's the problem is that and that's why I love it so much. I love being a fan because I'm like very much that way too. So I fit into that a lot. And I think that if not for anything else, Clemson wants to win 2 games. They want to beat us, and then they want to win the national championship. So they want to keep playing Alabama. And I think that even if all they want to do is keep playing Alabama, keep beating them every year, and then a part of that's beating us. So I'm just concerned, and I'm just concerned honestly about Travis Etienne. I mean, I think that he's going to be I'm not even concerned about Trevor Lawrence. I think we can, play a game to where we can kind of silence him for the most part. But, Travis he's so good. And it's so early on in the season that it's going to be such a big test really soon.
For the linebackers especially, it's going to be a big test, which is a little bit scary. But you talk about being a crazy fan. I got to start being careful. I'm going on 16. I got to start, I go up to the Dome. I'm talking, we beat Florida State. I'm running out of the Dome going, oh.
Right.
When Clemson came up to the Dome, there was this guy, and he's just going on and on about Clemson. And I was just like on the bus going up to the Dome. I was like, hey, man, we're beating you today. And he was like just being the biggest jerk. He got off the bus. He's like, Anybody see a football stadium around here? And all these Syracuse fans are like, dude, get out of here. You're the one Clemson fan on this bus. Odds are I get on the bus to go back to the car after the game, and he's sitting right next to me. And I go, how about that football game? Yeah, he was so mad.
There you go.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, man. Clemson fans are great. I love them too. They're pretty excited too. So I mean, it's two great fan bases going at each other. I mean, we're both for the color orange. I mean, it's such a great conference, man. I'm so glad we're in it. I'm so glad we get to play this awesome brand of football. Yeah, man, I can't wait. Week 0. I mean, we get to see Miami tonight, see what the other half of the ACC is representing.
Yeah.
And then, you know, we just get to experience an awesome time of year. And to me, it's the best. I mean, there's nothing better than this. Absolutely,
man. Perfect way to wrap it up. Getting ready for this season. Thanks so much for being on, Tyler.
Anytime, man.
Of course. Let's go Orange, baby. Wow.
Thank you for listening to Orange Heat, done by pursuing sports broadcaster and high school student Giovanni Heater. You can find him on Twitter and Instagram at GioHeater. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more Syracuse athletics and Orange Heat action. Let's go Orange!